Hi everyone, I'm Heather Poduska, star maker to entrepreneurs who want to unlock their potential and command any stage. Welcome to Thrive, the show where I bring you tips, resources, and people to help you create a more abundant life and business. You are in for high-value content coming to you from industry leaders who are growing their business, making an impact, and rocking their brands. Welcome to the show. Here we go. Hi everyone, I'm Heather Poduska, star maker to entrepreneurs who want to find their authentic voice so they can attract their ideal clients, make more money, and command any stage. Welcome to this episode of Thrive, How to Honor the Call of the Wild with my guest, deNapoli. deNapoli is a penguin expert, a TED speaker, and the author of the award-winning book, The Great Penguin Rescue, where she tells the story of rescuing over 40,000 penguins off the coast of South Africa. Now, Dyan lectures locally and globally on penguin conservation, on following your dreams, and on being a TEDx TED speaker. She has been one of 75 women invited to Antarctica by Homeward Bound to be part of their expedition in studying global warming. And in 2018, she's going to return for the Global Perspectives Guest Speaker Series for the Lindblad Expeditions and for National Geographic. This is actually Dyan's second appearance on Thrive, and I was thrilled to have her on the show after her visit to Antarctica to really hear about what it was like to be on the ground, on the ice, so to speak, to see what's happening with our planet and global warming. This isn't something that she read in the newspaper. This isn't something that's filtered through CNN or through the White House. This is from somebody who was in Antarctica with scientists studying the effects of global warming. It was a really fascinating conversation. She talked to us about what we can do as individuals to help prevent global warming, because sometimes it's overwhelming. You know, as an individual, you're like, what can I do? So she gives us some really concrete things that we can do as individuals. And we also talk about what it was like to be one of just a few women in the whole world to be honored with this opportunity. We also talk about speaking, why it's so important to get up in front of an audience to get your message out. And Dyan shares her expertise and her experience as a TED speaker. And it's something that she teaches now to help people to get prepared for TED speaking. And we go back and forth about different tips to really prepare to be on the stage, what it's like to embody confidence and to be on that stage with hundreds of people and the lights on you. It was really great conversation. And finally, Dyan shares her experience of following her dreams. It's such a unique story. Her path was not a straight line. It was a zigzag in the most magical, wonderful ways that landed her in Antarctica. So I hope you enjoy this episode with Dyan. I loved having her on for a second time. And speaking of speaking, if you're an entrepreneur who wants to be more visible, if you want to grow your audience, if you want to be on stages, if you want to be speaking in the media or online to represent your personal brand, your business, then I'd encourage you to check out my new packages for entrepreneurs. You can go to my website at heatherpoduska.com and click on the consulting tab, and you'll see their different packages at different levels for entrepreneurs who want to build their personal brand, who want to clarify their message, to zip that up so that when they are speaking, they're very aligned and very compelling. And also how to create signature talks and all of the collateral that goes along to make you look and sound like a superstar that people want to hire. Okay, if that's you, if that resonates with you, if that feels in alignment with where you're going, I encourage you to check that on out. heatherpoduska.com, click the consulting tab. Okay, I'd love to have you there, and welcome to this episode of Thrive. Hi everyone, I'm Heather Poduska, and welcome to this episode of Thrive, the show where I bring you tips, resources, and people to help you create a more abundant life and business. You're in for high-value content coming to you from industry leaders who are growing their business, making an impact, and rocking their brands. I am so excited to have my special guest today, deNapoli. Dyan is a penguin expert, a TED speaker, a veteran of 4 TEDx talks. She's frequent guest on radio and TV in the U.S. and abroad, including several appearances on the BBC and CNN. Dyan lectures locally and internationally about penguin conservation, pursuing your dreams, and how to give a TED Talk. Last December, she returned to Antarctica as one of 75 women selected for the inaugural voyage of Homeward Bound, a leadership initiative for women in science. Dyan returns to Antarctica for a third time in February of 2018 as a Global Perspectives guest speaker for Lindblad Expeditions and National Geographic. Thank you so much for being here, Dyan.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to talk about penguins and your expertise and all of the things that you've done. But I wanted to point out that you and I met through a gratitude group on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I just love that that's how we connected. And, you know, one of the things about your story, and I want you to share, is how following those little impulses in your life, those little yes signs, those things that you're like, I'm not sure why I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway, how that helped you, because you're here because I did that on the Facebook group. I said, wow, I'm just going to say hi to this person. And it turned out you had this great story that relates to the things I'm interested in, helping people follow their passion, create their brands, and entrepreneurship. So talk to us a little bit about your path and how you ended up as a penguin expert, because I don't think that's how you started.
Oh, the whole thing is completely unexpected, and I feel like I sort of have this accidental career that I could not have planned. I always loved animals, always loved the ocean, and my dream as a 5-year-old was to work with dolphins, and that seemed like this impossible dream, so I just sort of put it in the back burner and forgot about it. And when I was 30, for my 30th birthday, my parents gave me the gift of an Earthwatch expedition. And these are sort of a vacation where you go and you help research or collect data on whatever field they're doing. So I went to Hawaii to work with dolphins. And I thought it was the most incredible month of my life. I just loved every second of it. And afterwards, I thought, I have to try to do this. I have to try to pursue this dream of working with dolphins, because I don't want to get to the end of my life and look back and regret that I didn't at least try to do this. It's not very realistic at my age, or, you know, it seems a little crazy, but I just have to try. And I think everything I've done in my life, it's because I had an interest or a passion, and so I just pursued it. I've never had a big game plan. I just always followed my heart and followed my passion. And so I actually went back to school for another degree so I could apply for an internship, got the internship with dolphins, and spent 4 months in Hawaii and became a dolphin trainer. And then I had another internship still left to do. And so I did that at the New England Aquarium in Boston in the penguin department. And so that was how the whole penguin thing started.
Wow, that's amazing. So it started out with a love of dolphins. But I want to go back to something you said. You said that you went to back to school to apply.
Right.
Not to get the job, not because someone had promised you a position, but just for the opportunity to apply for the opportunity to have this internship.
Right. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, it was a huge gamble.
Yeah.
But I just felt as though I have to give this 100% of my effort, and I have to believe 100% that this will happen. I had to sort of push self-doubt out of the way and ignore the naysayers, both internal and external, and just sort of give it my all. And I think there's something that magical that happens when you do that. When you commit. Yes. When you commit. Yes. And when you are completely focused on that goal. Right. To the exclusion, just I'm focused on making this happen. And I think there is something magical that happens when you do that. And maybe the universe sort of says, okay, let's give you a hand here.
Wow, I got chills when you said that, because now I'm thinking about the magical part of it, because the plan, if you believe in universal plans, was not for you to spend the rest of your life studying dolphins.
And who knew? That's what I thought it was.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you committed, and the universe said, okay, you committed. Now let's go on this path. I'm going to get you there one way or the other.
Yeah.
So then you ended up at the New England Conservatory.
New England Aquarium.
See, I knew I was going to say that, because I went to the New England Conservatory, the aquarium, where you met The dolphins. I mean, the penguins.
The penguins, yeah.
The penguins. And what about the penguins made it a love affair for you? Like when you saw those little creatures, was it love at first sight, or did you have to go on a couple dates first? How did it work?
It actually really was love at first sight. So my first day as an intern, I get into a wetsuit, climb down into this exhibit, and I'm surrounded by 70 penguins, and they're squawking and honking and braying and swimming up to me. And I really was captivated right away, because what I discovered about the penguins that was unexpected was that each individual bird had its own individual personality. And I just didn't expect that at all. Because you see these colonial animals, there's millions of them in a colony, and they all look alike, and, you just think they're kind of alike. And they're really not. They were all very individual. And so I just was sort of captivated by them immediately, and I wanted to know more about them. I wanted to learn more about them. So I was there as an intern for a full semester, and then I continued volunteering after the semester ended. And so it was about a year and a half after I was there that a position opened up that I applied for, and I got.
Well, again, that commitment to the path. It was an internship, then you applied yourself and you got the position. And then how long were you there?
9 years in total.
So what did you learn most about yourself from the penguins?
I think the whole experience of being at the New England Aquarium, working with the penguins, educating the public, and so many things that happened along the way, is that I learned I'm capable of doing so much more than I ever dreamed possible. That I grew and stretched and expanded, my skills, who I am, in so many ways that I didn't imagine would happen working there. And primarily, I think the biggest thing was during the oil spill rescue that happened 3 years after I began working there as staff. And that was profoundly life-changing, and gave me this confidence in myself and my abilities that I don't think anything else could have done.
In what way? So what was it about that particular experience that because it was a pivotal experience for you, right, to be involved in that rescue?
Yeah.
So what happened then?
It was so briefly, there were 40,000 penguins that were impacted by an oil spill off the coast of Cape Town in South Africa. And I was a member of the first team of penguin experts to fly to Cape Town from America. There were 8 of us on that first flight to help train and supervise over 12,500 inexperienced volunteers how to take care of these penguins.
Wow.
And wash them and feed them and get them back to health before releasing them back into the wild. And literally the night that we arrived, after spending one day in the rehab center, 2 of us were put in charge of room 2, which had more than 4,000 oiled penguins in it.
Wow.
And about 250 volunteers a day going through that one room alone.
Wow.
And it was honestly the most terrifying moment of my life, because I thought, I don't know how to do this. Like, nobody knew how to do this, because it was the largest animal rescue that had ever taken place. So no one had ever rescued this many animals.
Wow.
Didn't know if it could be done. And so, ultimately we did it, and we were successful. And, after a lot of sort of, we had to figure out what we were doing. But that experience, it showed me that I can do so much more. Like I have the ability to handle something that seems impossible and to do it, and to do it well, and to be successful at it. And so that was just such a unforgettable and such a palpable experience of, I can do whatever I put my mind to.
Yeah, I can see that. So if someone's watching and they're not being thrown into the situation where they have to fly to Cape Town and deal with room 2, right? How can they get that same sense of, I can do this? There's so much more that I'm capable of that I don't even know what the boundaries are, because we tend to live in our bubble, and we have our own upper limit, boundaries that we set for ourselves. How can someone who is not thrown into that situation cultivate that spirit of, I can do this?
I think you can throw yourself into those sorts of situations. Do the thing that scares you. Right? I mean, there might be something you want to do, but you're like, that's too scary, or I can't do that. I don't know how. Just do it and figure it out, and feel the fear and do it anyway.
Right.
I really think it's about pushing yourself beyond your expected limits, your expectations of yourself. And so just do the thing that scares you. I mean, public speaking terrified me. I almost didn't apply for the job at the aquarium because it required public speaking.
Wow. Wow. So talk to us a little bit about that, because now not only are you a public speaker, but you're being interviewed by the BBC and you're doing TED and all of these things. So how did that throwing yourself in front of the audience evolve for you to become really confident? What changed during that process?
So I knew I would have to, if I wanted that job, I'd have to do public speaking. So I just said, okay, I just have to do it and overcome this fear. And so in the beginning, I would literally write out a script and sort of memorize it and just kind of gave the same script over and over. And then over time, as I came to understand the animals more and learn more about them and know more about them and be more knowledgeable and more comfortable, I started ad-libbing. And then over time, it just became easy and fun to do, because I think once you get the experience and you have the knowledge about something, it's much easier to do it.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because, I teach speaking skills to entrepreneurs, and a lot of times people sort of don't like the idea of following a script because they don't want it to be canned. They don't want it to be stiff.
Right.
And I think it's because of my music background. First, you learn the score, then you improvise, right? First, you learn your material cold, and then you can go off script because you know where home base is for you. And you knew the penguins, you knew the material, and you practiced it. So you were able to then have more fun with it and play with it and be creative. Do you think that having that script helped you in the beginning, or?
Yeah, I think definitely in the beginning that did help me. It helped me to become comfortable with the information, become comfortable just with the process of public speaking, standing up in front of 300 people and talking. So I think it really did help. And then, like I said, over time, it just get out there and wing it became more fun. Like, as you become really familiar with the information, you want to be more challenged.
Right.
And so then you just kind of go out there with nothing planned, perhaps, and just see what happens and improvise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're already an expert at that point.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. You know the information. So.
And you've also embodied the experience of standing on stage.
Right.
So your body has acclimated. That's one of the things, like when I'm doing my master classes for people, I get them up on stage as much as possible, even just to say, hi, my name is, because it's different being on the stage in front of people. Even if it's one person in the audience, it's a different level of nerves than practicing with your hairbrush in the mirror, right?
Right.
So, you also developed your skill as your body developed the skill of getting comfortable in that situation. Would you say that's true for you?
And the other thing, too, that I found really important to do, and also when I was then training other people how to give these talks, was, and this is like the number one thing I'll tell people when they're going to have to do a talk, is rehearse it out loud.
Yes.
Don't just do it in your head.
Yes.
Right? Because the first time you get up there and do it out loud, you're going to be tripping over your words, and it's going to sound weird coming out of your mouth. And if you're mic'd, it's going to sound even stranger to you.
Right.
So get used to the sound of your own voice and how does that sentence roll off the tongue? Because when you maybe write it and then you say it, it might not work well when you say it.
I love what you're saying, because it goes back to the body. It's muscle memory. It's not just how your voice sounds, but your tongue is a muscle, and you're using muscles in your cheek and all of those things to pronounce the words and to say the words, because I've had this, like when you're singing, if you get nervous, if you've rehearsed it, sometimes you're not actually thinking about the words, but your body remembers and it just starts to go, and then you're like, oh yeah, here I am, right?
Right.
So I love that you said that, to say it out loud, because it's the muscle memory part of it too. So talk to us more about the TED experience, because now you teach people stage presence and speaking. How is giving a TED Talk different than doing like a business presentation or some other kind of presentation?
It's very different in that they usually want you to have a script. So you have to memorize it.
Okay.
Which for me, so hard. Really, really hard to memorize, and also to memorize and have it sound natural. And so the big difference that I've found anyway is that you have to have a script, you have to memorize it, and so it just requires so much rehearsal, like over and over and over, and editing, for clarity, for brevity, and rehearsing in front of people. And getting their feedback is really important, really critical.
So how long is it? 18 minutes? How long is the TED Talk?
They're all different.
Oh, okay.
So they're in 3-minute increments, anywhere from 3 to 21 minutes. Most TEDx's, which is the smaller scale TED. Most of those talks are between 6, 9, or 12 minutes.
Okay.
So the ones that I've done have all been 9 or, no, one was 18, but 9 or 12 or 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
And TEDx, those are, just for people who don't know, TEDx is a smaller version of the TED
Right.
tree.
The main TED conference. So the main TED conference happens once a year out in California.
Is that Long Beach?
Long Beach, yes,
Beach.
exactly. Yep. And $8,500 to attend. You know, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
TEDx are smaller TED-like events done under the umbrella and licensing of TED. So they have to apply to TED for license. And they can only charge a maximum of, I think, $250 to attend, but many are even free. And they're smaller audiences, but those are all videotaped. And so then they're all put online. And then TED will select of all of those TEDx talks, of which there are tens of thousands now around the world. They've selected about 1,900 for the main TED website.
And you have been on the main TED website.
And my first one, the Great Penguin Rescue, about that oil spill rescue, was selected for TED, which was a huge honor, huge thrill.
That's amazing.
It was amazing.
That's amazing. And the thing that I love about it is that you got there because of your expertise in something that you're really passionate about. The goal, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but the goal wasn't to get on TED.
No.
The goal was to follow the penguin thread, which then ended up getting all this visibility and all of your acclaim and all these wonderful opportunities. And I think that's something that people sometimes, and I'm guilty of it at times too, of putting the cart before the horse. Like, I want to be on stage versus I'm an expert in my field and now I'm being invited on the stage for my expertise.
Yeah, I think I see that now. There's a huge trend of people wanting to speak on the TED stage or the TEDx stage. And not necessarily, because it's more self-promotion. And my mission, since I started my business, has been to raise awareness and funding to protect penguins because most of the penguin species are threatened or endangered. And so I donate 20% of my proceeds from my book and from all my lectures to penguin conservation groups. And so my mission is to reach as many people as possible with this message and with this story of what's happening to penguins in the wild. So it wasn't about me getting on TED, but it was about getting a story to a wider audience. And so I'm just so grateful to the TED group, to TEDx, for providing that platform for me to be able to do that.
That's great. So if somebody wants, I don't think there's anything wrong with self-promotion. I mean, you've got to be visible.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to get your message out to millions of people about the penguins, you have to be visible. Right. So I don't think there's anything wrong with being self-promoting, but I think that you have to have a story.
Right.
You have to have something to talk about that's interesting.
Exactly.
So what do they look for at TED and TEDx?
And that's exactly it. It's so what they're really looking for is something groundbreaking ideas, something that's outside of the box, a different way of looking at something we've looked at in the same way forever. And so it's really about something unique, something sort of mind-blowing or just a new way of looking at a subject that no one has thought to look at it that way before. And that's sort of, their tagline is ideas worth spreading. So it's something that, you'd watch a talk and go, oh, you have to watch this talk. This is so cool, right?
So what was I assume there are other penguin experts. So what was your take on the penguin situation that caught their attention?
Right. Well, they had seen an article about the book and my work in the Boston Globe, and so that's why
let's hold up the book. So
that's why I was invited. Okay,
I'm not sure what camera it is. The Great Penguin Rescue. Okay, let's keep that up there.
Okay.
There we go.
Thanks. So they had seen an article about that in the Boston Globe, and that's why I was invited. And so they said, we want you to tell this story of this rescue because it was the largest and most successful animal rescue in the history of the world. So that alone was something unique. And so when they had me they'll have you come in and do a rehearsal. And they said, it's great, but there needs to be something that makes it relevant to today because this was 2011 and the oil spill had happened in 2010. So how do we make this story current and relevant to today? Now, what had just happened was the BP oil spill. The year before.
Oh, yeah.
And there had been a biologist who had been quoted as saying, we should just euthanize all oiled birds because only 1% of them survive after being oiled and rehabilitated.
Wow.
And I remember reading that going, no. And I wrote a blog post about it. Like, that's not accurate at all.
Wow.
With some species perhaps, but with penguins and some other seabirds, they're very hardy and they can withstand this. And in the treasure oil spill, we had 95% success rate, and those birds lived just as long as their never oil counterparts.
Wow.
So I then that was my main thesis was, to sort of refute what this biologist had said about just euthanize them because they're not going to survive. It's like, no, here's proof, here's evidence of they do survive and they do just as well as never oiled penguins.
That's amazing. And this is your second time on Thrive with me, and I remember you saying something about penguins and why they're so important to the world. So talk to us. I want you to tell us again about that, because part of my brain was like, well, I'm sure a lot of people out there going, well, they're just penguins. They're just penguins. Who cares if there's one less penguin in the world?
Right.
So why penguins? Why are penguins important?
Right. Why should we care?
Yeah.
Basically because they're an indicator species. So for most penguin species, we've seen a 50 to 90% decline in the last 50 to 100 years, which is huge. And basically they are alerting us to the health of the oceans. The health of their ecosystem, which is the ocean. And so they're saying, hey, look what's going on over here. Our populations are crashing because the oceans aren't healthy. There's not enough food because of global warming, because of overfishing. Our food is disappearing. We're starving. And so that is alerting us that the ocean is not healthy. And ultimately, it's going to affect humans as well. What's happening in the oceans, we're all connected.
Right.
We're connected to all of this. So it's going to impact humans as well. So that is why, you can kind of draw this line from penguins or other animals to humans, ultimately.
So you were just in Antarctica, correct? Yes, with 75 women scientists studying global warming and the impact of global warming.
Yeah.
Yes. And I want you to tell us about that. So how does that play with what's going on right now in the world and the French global warming in the United States and the whole, how does that all fit together, Diane? Tell us. Tell us your opinion.
We had a lot of conversations about that on the ship.
I'm sure you did. What goes down on the ship stays on the ship.
Yeah, right. Because this is Homeward Bound, which is a leadership initiative for women in science. And it was an application process to apply to this. It was
Again, following that path.
And somebody posted it on Facebook. I wish I could remember who it was. I saw this thing for this, leadership expedition to Antarctica, and I went, I have to apply to that. And
see, that would never cross my mind. That's not something I'd be applying to.
No, I'm like, I want to go back, and I want the leadership training, and I want the connection with these other women from around the world, these other scientists. And so, it happened. The expedition itself, we left December 2nd. So it was just a month after not even a month after the election. So I was still reeling. Many of us were. There were only 8 Americans on board.
Wow.
Most of the women were Australian, but there were also Canadians and South African, one woman from Costa Rica, a French woman, and I think 1 or 2 from the UK. But we were all sort of still reeling from the results of the election, the unexpected results.
Unexpected. Whether you voted one way or the other was unexpected.
Exactly. It was unexpected for everybody. And so we definitely had conversations about how is this going to impact science and what's happening, the Paris Agreement. And, that became a topic of conversation for sure, because global warming is being seen most extremely at the poles, at the North Pole, at the South Pole. They're warming faster than any other place on Earth, which is why Antarctica was chosen as the backdrop for the Homeward Bound expedition.
Yeah.
To kind of shine a light on that.
Yeah. So you're on the ship and the conversation. What did you guys come up with? So say you're not in politics, or you're not a world famous, beautiful, blonde, gorgeous scientist in Antarctica, driving this force. What can we do as individuals to pay attention to this, to maybe influence how things go? Do we have any power as individuals to help the penguins and the whole food chain and the oceans? What can we do?
I think it's important now more than ever, and this is really, I think it's been driven home to so many of us, myself included, is how important it is to get out there and vote. Vote the issues and start voting locally, starting in your own community and voting in local politics. Because I think I, in the past, have been guilty of not really getting involved in the local politics and just, when the big elections come along, I'll vote. But I'm seeing now more than ever how important it is to start small and make sure you get the people who are you're behind the same issues as you are,
Right.
get them into office locally, because they're the ones that are going to be climbing that ladder
right.
ultimately to those really powerful positions.
Right.
So I think that it's important to get involved and understand the issues, read about the issues, be on top of the issues, and to lend your voice. Lend your voice to these things. I mean, I did the science march, and
I was just going to ask you if you did that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was great. And it's inspiring to do those things. You might say, well, what difference does it make? But just to feel as though you're part of this community, and you really get that sense of community and empowerment, and knowing I'm not alone in really caring about these issues. Like, look at all these other tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people who also feel strongly about this. So I think it gives you a sense of hope and of purpose, of an intention, and to kind of combat the hopelessness that maybe some of us might be feeling.
Well, and also I think it's super important for someone who's been on the ground. You're not sitting in some office in Washington, D.C. You've been on a boat to Antarctica, and you're lending your expert voice, who's had this real life experience, along with other world leading scientists, to see and report. I think that's extremely important.
And, we did see firsthand the impact of climate change down there. When we went to Palmer Station, which is one of the research stations, and we spoke to the researchers there, and, they're seeing the Adelie penguin colony there has pretty much disappeared. And the glacial retreat over the last 7 years has retreated about 300 yards, and it's uncovered this little bit of land that they now know is an island, which they never knew before. Yeah. So in very real time and in very recent time, they're seeing the impact of global warming there.
Wow.
Which is a little frightening.
Yeah.
But this was one of the things we talked about as leaders, is the importance of visibility, which is, I know what you talk about a lot, of getting your voice out there, of being visible, and kind of putting yourself out there, to spread that message, whatever your message might be.
And I think another thing that's really important that you're pointing out is that you don't necessarily have to be an extrovert. You have to have a mission, and you have to have a passion for something that you believe in. And once you connect to that, that pulls you forward, and it makes being visible maybe a little less uncomfortable.
Well, and that's a really great point that you talk about. You don't have to be an extrovert, because as you can imagine, a lot of scientists are not naturally extroverts, right? And so that was definitely something that, was the conversation. And I think what a lot of us sort of realize about ourselves is that we're introverts, but we can do the extroverted thing, but we need the downtime to regroup and get our energy back.
Right.
And so, we can be very extroverted, and it's a natural thing, but we need that time to just kind of come back to your center again.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people believe that or not, because I'm pretty chatty, but, I have that too. And one of the things about performing as a singer or a speaker, it's different than what you would think, because when you're like chit-chatting and you're going to networking events, you're talking to a lot of people about a lot of different things, and that can be very draining. But when you're performing and you're speaking, it's you and God or whatever, and the audience. So it's not the same kind of output of energy.
No, I actually find it very energizing. When I'm on stage, and I'm sharing whatever it is I'm sharing with people, I'm performing, if you will. Yeah. Or lecturing, I get a lot of energy, and you feel the energy of the audience too. Yes, and if they're with you or not, and you feel that. And so for me, the actual moment of performing is very energizing. And for several hours afterwards, I'm sort of riding that high, that adrenaline. Yeah. And then the next day, like say if I do two separate presentations on one day, the next day I'm tired. Yes. I do feel that the next day, but in the moment I'm energized by the connection with the audience. Yeah. And if you're in alignment with your integrity, I feel like there's also a third entity that's created. It's you, it's the audience, but then it's this shared energy. And I think that fuels everybody if the message is an integrity message. I like that thought of the third entity there. Yeah. What you're creating sort of together. Absolutely. Because it's not, if you're standing in your mirror, you don't have it. And if you're sitting looking at an empty stage, you don't have it. Right. It's
all of you together creating that. So
I like that.
thank you. Thank you very much. So what is up next for you? How can we support you, what you're doing, what's coming up for you? Where can people find you?
So people can find me. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, although I'm not really on Twitter much, but more Facebook and LinkedIn as The Penguin Lady.
The Penguin Lady.
The Penguin Lady. My website is thepenguinlady.com. I am currently building a new one. The old one is there, but there will be a new one hopefully in the next couple months up and running with a lot of new information on there. And the next big thing for me, which I'm so excited about, is I'm returning to Antarctica in February of 2018 as a guest lecturer, as you said in the intro, actually, for Lindblad Expeditions and National Geographic.
Oh, wow.
And that has been sort of my dream gig ever since I started my business, The Penguin Lady. So it's
Can I ask you a question about that? So you've kept that in the forefront of your mind, or even like floating around there. Do you think that's important for people to have that to pull them forward, even if they're not consciously thinking about it?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there always has to be something bigger, something more, like that thing that might seem impossible, but that's like the big wish, the big dream, like if I could do anything at all, what would it be?
Yeah.
And so you might not know how to get there yet.
You don't know the how.
You don't know the how.
Yeah.
But you have the desire, you have the dream. And I think all the way along, my journey, the whole thing, really, it's been like that. There's been, someday I want to write a book. Someday, boy, I'd love to speak on the TED stage, or I want to do this guest lecturing for Lindblad and Nat Geo. That's my sort of ultimate dream gig.
Yeah.
And so, so I think it is important to have those things. You might not know in the moment how you're going to get there, but to keep it in the back of your mind somewhere, I do think it's important. I think that intention, to have the intention there somewhere, is kind of critical, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so you've brought so many things to fruition. So you're going in February. You're going to be a guest speaker.
2 weeks in the Antarctic Peninsula.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So if you had to say, we're going to be wrapping up. So if you had to say what it means to you to thrive with all of these things in mind, how would you describe that?
I think for me, thriving is about living life to the fullest expression of who you are in the world, being authentic, being sort of the most powerful, open, loving you that you can be, and to do what you're passionate about and to share that with others.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I high five. Right? And I have to say that you're a living example of that. And I want to acknowledge you for doing that and for being a leader in so many ways, in leading the penguins and the global warming and the scientists and how to follow your heart. People don't always know what that looks like. And that's why I wanted to have you on again. It's so important. And the thing that is so cool, the reason you're here is because I texted you, my daughter came home with one of those Scholastic reader things. And it was about the Penguin Lady. And I was like, I know her. But then it was like my daughter is reading something about, a woman scientist who's leading the way, who followed her heart. So I really want to acknowledge you and thank you for being such a shining example. And thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So, and your website again is?
thepenguinlady.com.
Thepenguinlady.com. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us as well. As always, until next time, here's to hitting all your high notes. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Hi everyone, it's Heather again. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Thrive. Every week we try to bring you people and information to help you change your life for the better, to grow your business, to expand your thinking, and to open your heart. If you did enjoy this content, I would so appreciate it if you would go to iTunes and review us. Let us know how we're doing. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. And if you found this information helpful or useful in any way, please share it on out. Let your friends and family know about Thrive. And finally, if you'd like to know more about me, you can visit me at heatherpoduska.com. Until next time, here's to hitting all your high notes.